Hello and welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. The trial for the man accused of attacking a London Muslim family on June 6th, 2021 in a hit and run is getting underway in Windsor. Nathaniel Veltman faces 5 charges, 4 counts of first-degree murder and one count of attempted murder. So today I'm talking with London Free Press reporter Jane Sims about the jury selection, the trial, and what many see as a test of Canada's terrorism laws. Hi, Jane. How are you?
Hi, Rachel. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. We always love having you on for sure. So for those who maybe forget, because I know we all heard about this when it first happened, June 6, 2021, the Afzaal family was hit in a hit and run. Can you just briefly recap what happened that day?
Sure. It was in the evening on a beautiful spring night. The family had gone out for a walk. They were at the corner of Hyde Park Road and South Carriage Road when a pickup truck slammed into them. 4 of them were killed, and one young boy survived. It was not long later that Nathaniel Veltman was arrested. And within a day, as we well remember, the London police came out and they said they believed that this was a targeted attack on Muslims. In the days afterwards, during his court appearances, Veltman, who was only 20 then, was told that there had been a decision made that not only were his first-degree murder charges going to be argued as a planned and deliberate act, which is the usual route taken in first-degree murder cases, it was also going to be argued that this was an act of terrorism, which was something very unusual. Mm-hmm. What comes out of this legally, I'll be a little wonky here, is that the prosecution team in this trial is made up of both provincial crowns and federal prosecutors. And so what I anticipate we're going to see in the coming weeks is a fairly detailed argument surrounding terrorism and ideology. And that's what's going to make this different. We haven't had, the terrorism laws were passed after 9/11. I wrote a story about this last week that for the most part, the only time that they've been used have involved offenders who were planning some sort of an attack. Those terrorism laws were basically put there to sort of stop a 9/11. But in the past 3 years, there's been 2 cases based in Toronto where judges have declared that the first-degree murder, the convicted first-degree murderer was a terrorist, mm-hmm. And those were on guilty pleas. This one is different because this is the first time we're going to argue it in front of a jury. So this is going to make this, for the legal community, it's going to make it very interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, it will be fascinating for sure.
Yes.
I want to talk. I just want to talk about the boy that was hurt. The Afzaal family's the youngest son. He was 9 years old at the time of the crash. How's he doing? Do we know? Have we heard any updates on him?
I haven't heard any updates yet, and I guess we will probably hear a little bit at the trial. But clearly, I mean, we're sort of in a place right now with him. I mean, under the law too, you'll notice that in reports right now, we're not naming that little boy, right. Because he is protected. And so I anticipate we're going to hear some, but clearly this is a tragic story.
Yes.
And
yes.
On many levels. So yes.
Yeah. Now the trial's taking place in Windsor. The crash, of course, happened here in London. Why is it in Windsor? Why did they move it?
Well, I will say this, Justice Pomerantz's reasons are not public, but I can talk in general terms about why there are things what's called a change of venue. We've seen it before in other cases. We've seen cases come to London from other places. We've seen cases in London go other places. There are a lot of factors that are considered. Mostly it has to do, in general terms, it usually has to do with public interest and publicity. That, the primary goal in a trial is to make sure it's fair, and you have to get an unbiased jury, and you have to get a jury that's not so steeped in the facts of the case that they're going to be able to try it, in an unbiased way.
Mm-hmm.
So the decision to move this trial was made more than a year ago during pretrial motions. And again, Justice Pomerantz did not elaborate why, but I think you put two and two together, given the extraordinary public response to this situation, it's pretty apparent why the Superior Court deemed it necessary for this to happen.
Right. There will be a chance for those in London to watch the trial, though. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, it is limited, right? But however, there are two courtrooms at the London Courthouse, the Middlesex County Courthouse, that have been set aside. Admission is limited. I think there's only room for 60 people. But if people want to go watch the trial, which will begin on Monday, they can go down to the courthouse and watch it remotely.
Are we expecting a lot of people?
Well, it's hard to say, right? Yeah. I mean, like it is, I mean, this isn't like an episode of Law and Order. This is going to be a 3-month trudge. There's a lot of us kind of crossing our fingers and hoping that maybe they can get through this a bit quicker. However, given what the prosecution wants to do and the stakes here, this is going to take a while. And I'm curious to see how many people do make that choice. There were, so many people here who were largely invested in this and they want to be able to see it. It's, the drive to Windsor at this time of year is okay. So, I did it on Tuesday and but there will be that opportunity. I'm curious to see how many people take it up, except because I've seen other cases where we've had overflow rooms, and I think sometimes we anticipate a bit more interest than kind of shows itself. So right. We will see, right?
Yeah. Why do we think it'll be a 3-month trial? Is this normal for this type of thing? Is this because we're trying the terrorism laws?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, there is precedent setting stuff that might happen here, right? Mm-hmm. So, it is a complicated argument that has to be made. In general, I can only say in general terms what I know about what needs to be done to prove this part of the law is that you have to prove someone has an ideology. What we've seen in the past is that terrorism charges have been successful against people who belong to certain groups. Right? There are identified groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS and things like that there have been people who've been connected to those groups and who've been deemed to be terrorists. This is different because this is Islamophobia, and there is a thinking that there is that given how the world has changed since 9/11 and the access to information and the existence of white nationalist ideology, if it's proven, I think I can understand why, particularly those in the Muslim community, would like to see the prosecution of a case that goes the other way. Let's just say, right, yep. And identify someone who isn't Muslim as part of a ideological group, and that's part of it too. I think, So we'll see what they have, but like lengthy cases like this. We've had lengthy cases before. The Bandidos was a mammoth case. It went on for months and months. Way back. I mean, I covered a murder case in Sarnia back in 1999 that went 10 weeks. So, it just depends on what the evidence is and who's testifying and what it's going to look like. So we'll see.
Now, Nathaniel Veltman was in court earlier this week, and he's pled not guilty to all 5 charges. Yeah. He didn't say anything. His lawyer was speaking for him. What's the reasoning behind that, I guess?
Don't know. It was made clear at the beginning of jury selection on Tuesday that his defense lawyer, Chris Hicks, would be putting the pleas in for him. And, he stood between Mr. Hicks and Peter Ketchison, who is also on the defense team, and with his hands at his side. And Mr. Hicks put in the pleas on his behalf. So that's, that is the arraignment that happens before jury selection. I don't know if it will happen in the Veltman case, but I've seen it in other cases. Usually there is a rearrangement once the jury is seated.
Okay.
So that would happen Monday. But at this point, like the not guilty plea is in, and we have a trial.
And
Yeah.
what's the prosecution asking for in this case?
Well, there's mandatory sentences on first degree murder. So the mandatory sentence on first degree murder is life with no chance of parole for 25 years. Back in 2011, the law changed that those convicted of multiple murders could get consecutive parole ineligibilities. That law was scrapped last year. So the parole ineligibility period, he cannot get multiple parole ineligibilities. If he is convicted, and he has not been convicted yet, he is innocent until proven guilty. But in general, if a person is convicted of first degree murder, the mandatory sentence is life, no chance of applying for parole for 25 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about jury selection, because that happened this week as well. Where are we at with that now?
Well, jury has been selected. It was completed Wednesday morning. On Tuesday, there had been a lot of time set aside for jury selection, and I think a lot of jury notices went out in Windsor and Essex County. So there was probably about 150 people on the first day that were in the courtroom, and I think what the Crown and the defense had anticipated was this was going to take a lot of time. As it turned out, it went pretty smooth.
Okay.
So what they wanted and what they got is they have 14 jurors selected plus 2 alternates. That is not unusual in a lengthy trial. We all have things going on in our lives, and especially jurors, and sometimes things come up and they can't continue. They can't continue anymore.
Why 14 and not just 12? Like, because usually it's only 12 that make the decision, right?
Right. Well, 12 will
now
make
we have
the decision.
16. Okay.
So what will happen, those alternates, and I can't say exactly what's going to happen in this case, but from my experience, you have alternates who are there sort of as placeholders during the opening statement. Once that opening statement is in and the trial is on, those folks can go. Right?
Okay.
14 jurors are selected, and I've seen this in other cases, and they will sit for the entire trial, all 14. But only 12 will be chosen to render a verdict in the case.
I see.
Again, this is because we may get 2 or 3 weeks down the road and someone can't serve anymore. And so now you've got somebody, you will still have 12 people available to render the verdict at the end.
Now, was it difficult to choose the jurors? Because to me, this story was everywhere across Canada, especially at the time. Like, this was a hard to miss story. I thought it would be difficult to find people who would be maybe unbiased enough to sit on the jury.
First of all, in general, people who you'd be surprised how seriously very seriously and methodically and that people will take on jury selection. Okay. I mean, if you're called and you can serve, right? I've seen this lots of times that people will step up, right? And they'll say, yeah, I can do this.
Okay.
In this case, again, there was a thinking this was going to take some time, but I was surprised that some of the folks that I saw going through jury selection, I mean, they didn't have a big knowledge of this case. And it just tells you how we all live in our own little silos, right? I mean, we are 2 hours away from Windsor. They do live in the shadow of the United States. And I've lived down close to that area in Chatham many, many years ago. And I kind of get it. You don't have a connection back to other places.
Right.
And yeah, the folks that were eligible to be jurors, they considered what was being asked of them and they stepped up. So, and also the other thing that has happened is that now that there's something called peremptory challenges that are not available anymore. Like, you know how you used to see on TV shows, they'd have, jury advisors, sitting with the lawyers, and got this guy and get this guy and not stuff. That's kind of out of the Canadian system now. I mean, if
Okay.
you can serve, and a defense lawyer can't stand up, or a crown can't stand up if after someone says that they're able to serve and they've answered all the questions appropriately, they can't stand up and say, I challenge that person anymore. That was eliminated several years ago. So it makes things go by pretty fast, because if you're not, and especially in sort of run-of-the-mill cases, average cases, where there isn't any kind of challenge or anything else, if your number's picked, you're on.
Right. Okay.
There's not really a question. Yeah.
Can the jurors give reasons why they shouldn't be on there? Do they still do that?
Yes. So at the beginning of a jury process, the jury panel is asked, if you want to come forward, if you got something going on, like you booked a vacation, right? Or you have a medical condition, or you don't understand English. English is your second language, right?
Yeah.
Or I can't sit for a long time. I've heard that one before.
Okay. Are there any silly reasons? What's the silliest one maybe you've heard?
Oh gosh, I've heard a lot of silly ones.
Yeah.
I can't pull it out of my head right now, but there are some people who put in Hail Marys that don't get away with it, right? However, if you're a small business owner, right?
Yeah.
And
that
this
impacts your income.
Affects your livelihood.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can sit. And I will say this, the court is fairly generous on that stuff, right? People, I mean, by and large, I will say, people try to figure out a way to do it, because we're all really nice people and we don't want to disappoint anyone, right?
Right. Well, that's kind of nice to hear, because I would assume, we're all trying to get out of it, right?
Yeah, I've seen people go up and say, look, I can do this, but I just want you to know that, I'm kind of dealing with, like, I have an elderly parent, or I have this, or I have that, or I've got 3 kids in school, or I've got, and I will say that judges are fairly sympathetic to this sort of stuff. And because they want someone to be there. They don't want to pick somebody, A, who doesn't want to be there, and B, is like sitting there all the time thinking about,
something else they have to do.
Yeah. So I can give an example from yesterday. I don't think I'm telling tales here, but there was one potential juror came out and said, look, my kid's getting married in 3 weeks. Right. And if we have a lot of things planned, it's like, away you go. Right.
Yeah.
Away you go.
Yeah. Big life event. Sure.
But if you are able to serve, it's part of your responsibility as a Canadian citizen.
Your civic duty. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we looking for now? We have a jury and the trial begins Monday, you mentioned. So what's your planning covering this? What should we look forward to kind of at the beginning of the trial next couple of weeks?
Okay, so Monday morning, I anticipate that there will be an opening statement from the prosecution. I don't know how lengthy it'll be. However, once that opening statement is in, they start calling evidence, and there's a lot of evidence. There is a lot of people that they're going to be, that's on the witness list. Not that they're going to call everybody, but it's going to be a lot. And so once that starts, it's going to take a lot of time. I anticipate it'll be civilians, it'll be police officers. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few expert witnesses come in. It will, unfortunately, this community is going to have to relive a lot of sadness as we go through this. And we're going to be dealing with some demons here, and it's going to take a while.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of people in London who will be watching this trial and certainly following your reporting at lfpress.com, and we'll watch for all your experts reporting as the trial goes on. Thank you so much,
Rachel. And I just want to put a plug in for a couple things if I could.
Sure, yeah.
We have a tremendous court artist by the name of Chaz Vincent, who was with me yesterday, and his sketches that he did yesterday were extraordinary, and I hope readers will keep an eye out on those.
I saw some of them. They are very good. Yeah.
So he's fantastic, and just a fantastic person on top of it. The other thing I will mention is that we're going to try to live blog this, and
Okay.
it's something that we're trying across the chain, that we will have a running blog. I know that there have been readers in the past that have looked for tweets that we've done. We're going to try to do it. I think, we'll have a story every single morning at lfpress.com, and embedded in that will be a live blog.
Oh,
So,
great. Okay.
yeah. So
if they want to follow along on the day, if they can't watch it, then
yeah, and
that.
we're going to comment every once in a while on what we can comment on, and just to keep people, up to speed. So that's
great.
a plan.
I
Okay?
will be watching for that for sure.
All right.
Thank you so much, Jane, and best of luck in your reporting.
Thanks, Rachel. Great talking to you.